Hey there, my name is Matt, and I've been a musician pretty much my entire life since I started talking. I was singing and started learning instruments when I was 8 or 9 years old, picked up the guitar when I was 13 or 14 years old, went to music school, have a music ed degree, etc. And I've been writing music, recording music for a long time. But the part of my process that I think was underdeveloped or has been underdeveloped the longest is the mixing aspect, the mixing and mastering aspect of the process. I've always been pretty good at writing and then capturing good audio recordings, nice clean audio. But then I could do basic stuff, and if I were doing voiceover work, I can always make that sound pretty good. But fully orchestrated band stuff, I could get it. Like I said, I could get it to a certain level, but I never thought that it sounded professional. And normally, what I would do, anything that was important, big tracks that I'd recorded, I would send it out to people who do it professionally. I have friends who mix and master professionally, and I would pay them to mix and master my tracks. Well, I don't know. I sort of got. I just wanted to learn more. So in the last year or so, I've really made it a priority to do a better job in mixing and mastering, just to be self-sufficient, I think, for one thing, to not have like holes in the process. And it really, I think in the past, I just didn't have a very good strategy to do it. I didn't really know. I knew I wanted a professionally sounding recording. I know what that sounds like, but I didn't really have a strategy to get there. And it just felt kind of overwhelming with all the options that you have when you think about all the plug-in options and EQing and compressing and then multi-band compressing and limiting and all this stuff. And then all your time-based effects. There's just like so many options. It just seemed very overwhelming. But I made it a priority, and I think I've come a long way in the last year or so. I've come up with some strategies, and I think my mixes are sounding a lot better. I consider them professional. They're probably not the best. I know there are plenty of people who can do it way better than I can. But at least to my ear, it's like, okay, this is something that I could release and not feel insecure about it. So I thought that it would be fun to kind of talk about the strategies that I've learned and really gear these videos towards people who are just beginning their journey into mixing. Because I feel like that's the level where I can really I can really help. There's plenty of like advanced techniques that you can find on YouTube, but I feel like the beginning to intermediate level stuff is not out there as much. So I thought it'd be fun to create content around that, to speak to the folks who are just kind of starting out on their journey, kind of like I was not too long ago. And then also it'd be fun for me to it'll help me sort of solidify some of the concepts and strategies that I now use, to sort of embed it into me so that it feels a lot more solid when I'm going about my process as well. So how I wanted to start is just kind of going through a DAW and kind of getting like a feel for the map, orient ourselves in a DAW, and then in subsequent videos, I'll start to talk about specific techniques of working with audio. So this first one, I am going to talk to you about Ableton. So this is kind of a quick setup and overview in Ableton. Now, many DAWs are very similar, at least they all conceptually are the same. You have tracks and places to put effects and places to edit your audio. But to me, Ableton, and people love Pro Tools. I've used Digital Performer, Pro Tools, Cubase, a bunch of different things. People love different DAWs for different things. I love Ableton because of how flexible it is, how much you can do with it, how like deep and detailed you can get with it, but also how simple it is to use if you are just getting started. So I really like Ableton, so I just figured we would start here. So Ableton. So why do I like it? First of all, it's super flexible. Like I said, the UX is really friendly. It's great to look at. I have a hard time with certain software, certain DAWs that are ugly to look at. I just don't want to spend any time with it. Ableton looks amazing. It's super flexible in terms of color schemes and things. But also it's very flexible with a workflow. There are two very distinct workflows that you can use in Ableton. One is this session view that we're looking at right now. And if you hit tab, this is the arrangement view. And I'll talk through those a little bit in a minute. Another thing that I really love about Ableton is how there's like multiple ways to do things. You can group tracks together in different ways. You can group plugins together. You can so that you can split an audio track. It's pretty cool. I'll show you that. It's very powerful as a live companion, specifically in this session view. DJs use it because it's very easy to trigger different patterns and things using these little these are clips here. I'll show you what those are all about, and then playing full scene, so like full orchestrated stuff. So you can like play verse, play chorus, play bridge just with a click of the button, or trigger different sounds, trigger different effects. Even band leaders use it to trigger. Say you're a band leader, you're on tour with with a solo artist, but they needed a band to accompany them. You can use Ableton to trigger like your guitar player's digital effects automatically. It's really powerful for live stuff. And like I said, it's super friendly to work in. I feel not overwhelmed when using Ableton, so I really like it. All right, so those are my reasons. Let's talk about the map, though. Where things are, and I'm not going to get too super detailed in everything. Like I said, Ableton, it can get really deep. You can do a lot of stuff with it. But just to give you like a little bit of an overview of where stuff is, first of all, on the left-hand side, when you open up Ableton, you're going to see the session view, and you're going to see it's going to give you some tracks up here on the left, and then some return tracks and a master on the right-hand side. But if you look over on the left, this is your menu where you can access just a bunch of stuff. And there's a search bar on the top if you want to look for something specific, so it makes it super fast. But here at the top, you have sounds. Ableton comes with a lot of sounds and instruments that you can use, a lot of MIDI instruments that you can use, soft synths. And you can find them just in like as per samples in sounds, or as specific things like drums, instruments that play those samples. So you could choose an instrument and bring it in. To use these is very simple. Like say you wanted a sound, you wanted to start playing with a sound, you just like drag it into this open area over here and see how it puts it in the bottom, and then you have your MIDI instrument, can play it. That sounds like ass, so let's get rid of that. Or you could drag it into a MIDI track that you already have. So like here, I've got this number 2 MIDI. I just dragged it right there. And here it shows up again. And there you go. Let's just get rid of that again. Sounds terrible. And then below, or you can drag in like a drum rack here. And this would allow you to see how on the left-hand side, it's like already gives you a kick, a snare, 2 snares, some hats and things. This allows you, it just sort of creates a template for you to create a drum kit. So, and then if you don't like these sounds, you can just hit this little button here and choose a different sound, and it'll replace it. Hit enter, and there it is. And so now this triggers that sound instead. So then on the left-hand side menu below that, you have audio effects. So Ableton comes with a ton of different, very useful effects. A lot of them are really good, particularly the EQ. I use the EQ8 all the time, pretty much on every track that I record. But it has a bunch of other cool stuff too. Dynamics, saturation. You have reverb and delays and all sorts of stuff. And I highly recommend, if you're really just getting started, to get good at using the effects that come with Ableton, because a lot of them are quite good. And if you learn them, they're super easy to work with. So if you learn the concepts of how to work with the innate Ableton plugins, later on when you want stuff that sounds better, you'll have a better concept of how to use it. A lot of plugins, they can look very complicated, a lot of knobs, just like their hardware companion or the hardware units that they were based on. But they could be extremely overwhelming. But if you get to know the Ableton ones, which traditionally are much simpler to use, it's easier to understand what the concepts are, the more complicated ones. So I would highly recommend use those first. And there's tons of tutorials on how to use them, and I'll go through some too. Then there's MIDI effects, Max for Live. We won't talk about plugins down here. So this is any third-party plugins that you have. So I've got a bunch of stuff, like I've got Arturia makes Analog Lab, and so I use all the keyboard stuff from Arturia. and then there's other plugins like Universal Audio makes some excellent hardware style plugins that I use. There's Waves, a bunch of stuff, but that you would find anything that you bought or downloaded from a third party, you would find in the plugins. And then I won't get into the other stuff, clips, samples, grooves, except templates I will get into, which one of the amazing things about Ableton, and probably most DAWs, but I really like how it's set up here, is it allows you to create a template for yourself. Like say I have one for like a full band template or a voiceover template, and then just quickly be able to recall it whenever you like. And it's very easy to do and save. Below that are packs that you can download. So Ableton offers, maybe you don't get it in your original download, some you do, but offers packs of samples that you can download. Some are free and they're actually really great. Some are paid and you would find them here. There's a user library of things that I've saved. Like I've saved templates here, I've saved plugin chains here, etc. Kits that I've made are all in my user library. And that's it. And then like some current project stuff. But the ones that I just mentioned are the ones that I use the most. It's the sounds, the effects, the plugins, and my user library. So continuing around a little bit, on the top left-hand side, you have the option. There's a few different ways. Like if you're in the arrangement view, which like I said, you hit tab. The arrangement view is if you're just like recording sort of straight across from left to right. It's probably pretty familiar to you, but you can hit follow and as stuff is playing, the arrangement view will scroll past the playhead. You can turn that on and off. There's the metronome stuff here. So this is how fast or slow you want the piece to be, the song to be. This is where you would turn on and off your metronome. And you can also, so when I'm recording, typically, unless I've already orchestrated the whole thing out and I've got drums in the mix or something, I typically have this on, the metronome on when I'm recording. And then this one bar here is where you set the count in. So when you hit record, how many bars or beats are going to get played to get you ready before the thing starts to record. So that all happens there. And this is, like I said, turn on or off the metronome. It's funny, but the volume for the metronome, I think my head's in the way here. Let me try to, is in the, let me just get this down here. Is in the bottom right-hand corner on the right-hand corner in the master track. This isn't like your the volume of your headphones. No, this is the volume of the metronome. So that happens here. And let me just bring that back to full screen. All right. So continuing across the top is the transport, and so this is like your play, your stop, your record. I've got nothing recorded in here, so there's really nothing going on, but it does allow me to record. And your loop is here too. So say you wanted to loop a section over and over so that you could listen to it and maybe compose something to it. That happens here. And you start the end, beginning and end loop on either side of it. Now, one of the cool things that that's so valuable with Ableton is in the right-hand side, it makes it super easy to assign things to a keyboard, like your computer keyboard or a MIDI keyboard, to trigger certain things to happen. So if I want a key on my keyboard to trigger something, I hit key. I choose the thing that I want it to do. Like say I want to be able to hit a key and it starts recording. So I hit the little record button. Say I want to use the number 3. And now see how it says N3? That means the number 3 will trigger Ableton to start recording. And you can see on the left-hand side, it tells you what it's done. So you can there's so much that you can do that you can trigger. So right now, if I hit 3, it starts recording and spacebar stops it. The other thing, and then the last thing around the top I wanted to say is just up here, you kind of look at this from time to time because this is your CPU meter. So this is how hard Ableton is making your computer work. And this is something to watch because depending on how I have a really souped up, so I'm on a Mac, but it's a pretty souped up MacBook Pro and it can handle a lot, but I sometimes bring the CPU much higher than like in the 70s percentage. If I have a lot of effects and plugins and happening, I've got a lot of instruments, and I've got mastering on it, it can really take its toll on your system. And there are ways that you can lower that, and I'll show you that. I'll show you that in a bit. But this is something to watch. Right now, since there's nothing going on, there's like no tracks happening. It's Ableton's hardly doing anything. All right, so let's go to tracks. So when you first bring up Ableton, it's going to give you a couple MIDI tracks, a couple audio tracks, and it's going to give you return tracks and a master track. And it's very easy to add the different ones. So you could just right-click in the open space here and insert audio track. It's also just on a Mac, Command T, insert MIDI track, insert return track. Those are the three. And of course, so a MIDI track, that's for soft synths that you're typically going to play with a MIDI keyboard. And an audio track is anything that you're going to need a microphone for. So it would be, it's like a human voice going through a microphone, going through your interface, going into Ableton. To change the name of it, you can just right-click and hit rename, or Command R does the same thing, and we'll just call this whatever, guitar. You can also change the colors here as well, that make different color schemes for different types of instruments, which I do. I'll show you a template of mine later on. You can also group tracks together. I always like to group tracks together. I have a specific grouping method. And a lot of times you do that because just to keep it organized for your own head, to have good project management, but also because you may want to affect things the same way. Maybe you want to put the same verb on a bunch of different vocal tracks. So to do that, you select the tracks that you want and you hit Command G. You can also right click and see, here it is, it creates a group. I'm going to create a different color just so it makes it more apparent. But this also is very helpful when you have a ton of tracks. So you have 30, 40 tracks on there. You group them together. That way you can consolidate them. Just hide them back into the group, and it makes it easier to sort of to get around and to negotiate the DAW. And then to ungroup, you can just right click and ungroup tracks right down here, or it's Shift Command G. The other thing is, so this should feel very similar to you if you looked at DAWs before, but in order to record something, you have to record enable the track. And that's right down here on the bottom. Selecting where the number is, the orange number, on or off mutes it, or you can solo it with the solo button. And you can solo groups, and you can solo a group in it, and it will solo all the instruments in that group. Now, down the bottom here is two different things. It is a window that shows either the clips, so once you've recorded something, or it shows your audio effects. And how it sort of works is this. Let's just we'll put a sound on here or something. Hopefully, yeah, this one again. And it's soloed, so you can't hear it, but all right. So now you can see here. This is your rack window, like this. And I can, this is where it's going to show the instrument that's being used. And it's also, if we put effects, this is where we would stick it. So if we want to go to an EQ, we want to put an EQ8 on here, right here on the end, it would just go right into this effects rack window. And then if I hit Shift Tab, so Tab switches between the session view and the arrangement view, like I showed you before. If we Shift Tab it, what we're going to see is clips, and the recorded clip will show here. So once we hit record and we do something, this is where it would show, and we can do things, we can loop stuff and do stuff in the clip. But I'll show you that. Let's actually get rid of this. Let's find a bass of some sort. Let's see, like bass. Oh, the other thing is, if you're looking at these samples and you want to preview it, you want to hear it first, you can actually, right below the clip, the sample window, you can hit this little headphones button, and it'll demo it for you, so you can kind of go through. All right, so this is a innocuous bass here. So let's just put the bass. Let's take this bass, put it here. So recording things in Session View is quite easy. First of all, you just need to make sure that you have your track record enabled, which we do. And then you see the shape in each clip here is now a circle, where all the other ones are square. To start recording, you just hit that circle. And here we'll record something dumb. All right, and now to check what we've done, just hit Shift Tab, and here we are. See the bottom screen goes from that rack view to this clip view. And one thing we can do, because this looks kind of big and there's really only one line happening, it's this bass line right here. If I hit Fold, it actually removes all the notes, except for the ones that I've used. So it makes it a little bit more useful. And since I played this so poorly, I'm just going to quantize this really quick. Right click, hit quantize settings. You just choose your note length to quantize to, your percentage, and hit apply, and there it goes. So this will probably, yeah, it's going to sound bad, but so be it. No, that was short. Let's just make that longer. All right. Very easy to move these around too. We'll do some more editing stuff with MIDI later on, but it's very easy to edit MIDI in Ableton. So now, say I'm like, okay, we got a bass, but let's just add something else on here. Let's just find like a keyboard sound, like an organ or something. Maybe orchestral, maybe some strings. No, that's not that type. Strings, whatever, cello section. Okay. And say we want to record something to this fine bass line we just recorded. We make sure it's record enabled and then just hit the circle in the clip that we want to record to. And here it is. All right. And now, once again, we can see the Shift tab so we can see what we recorded. I'm not going to quantize this. It's totally fine, I think, for this purpose. But now we've got these two clips that we've created, and how we would play them together is by hitting on the right-hand side here the play button that is in the same horizontal scene as the bass and the cello. So here we go. Very simple. So imagine this is our intro. Well, then we could right-click or hit Command R and just call this intro. Whoop. See? Oh. And that's our first scene. Maybe this is the intro of our song. Now say I'm like, I'd like to do something different bass-wise than what's going on, just to check and see if I like it better. Well, we go back to the bass, hit record enable, hit the play button again, and then we just do something a little bit. I know, it's a masterpiece. So now we can audition the two. We can play these two together. So if we start it, let's see. Maybe we start with this one and this one, and then change to the other bass. And that's how it works. So imagine each one of these tracks is filled out with a bunch of different clips, different things we wanted to try. See how awesome of a writing tool this is? Like, oh, maybe I like this verse guitar comp better than this verse guitar comp. Well, you can now audition them all and structure it. And so maybe this is now the verse, and then this scene is maybe the bridge, and then this scene is the chorus. And the other cool thing is you can move these around. So say like, oh, I don't want the cello to come in on in the intro. I want to wait. We want to delay entrance of this beautiful piece of art that we created with this cello section, not in the intro. So the intro is maybe just this bass, but then maybe in verse. Oh yeah, there it comes. And you just trigger it on the right-hand side. You're triggering scenes. Scenes are a collection of horizontal clips. So very simple and amazing to work with. And imagine if you're doing an electronic show or a DJ show and you want to trigger things, it's just an amazing format to do that. And then you can also assign, as I mentioned before, like you can assign to either your computer keyboard or to a MIDI and trigger these things. So you could say like you had like a 64 grid, like an Ableton push, some sort of interface like that where you can, it has 64 buttons. I think it is 8x8 square. You just like trigger these different either scenes or trigger these different clips with all those with each one of those buttons. So super flexible with that. All right. Well, say we've done this now and we're like, okay, but this isn't the best place to mix and master your songs. Like you can do, this has like, obviously you could do like volume stuff and you can do pan stuff and you can use send. So you can send your tracks to reverbs and delays and things. But it's not like it's hard to automate here. It's not the best workflow for your mixing and mastering. So like, say though you have created an outline for your song and now you want to get it over into arrangement view so that you can do some mixing and some fine tuning. Well, all you have to do is let's see here. This is gonna go this one. Wait a minute. All you have to do is hit record. And will this play? Yep. And see what's happening down here on the... Hold on one second. On the left-hand side, it played the piece down here into the arrangement view. So you're basically recording it. You're passing it from the session view to the arrangement view just by hitting record here and making sure your scene is correct. And then there's a little button up in the top right-hand corner here, and that locks it into your arrangement view. And then from here, you can do a bunch of different mixing stuff. And this is the workflow that I tend to use it. So I used to write songs and sort of structure songs out in the session view and then get it into the arrangement view. I tend to not do that anymore. I tend to just record right in here, which the same principles apply. So say I want to record bass here, I would just hit the record button and all right, and very simple. So I like using this view right now, but it totally makes sense if people like structuring things and demoing things in session view before, and they're just writers or not DJs or whatever, before getting it into arrangement view. I totally understand the how useful and powerful that is. So arrangement view. Now I think what I'll do next is just bring up another just a more full piece that I've worked on, just so that you can see stuff and how I arrange things with a bunch of tracks in here. All right, and here we go. So here's how like a full orchestrated, like complete song looks like and how I do it. Actually, first of all, let's go back to the session view for just a second because it's a little bit easier to see the groupings. First of all, I have a particular type of color scheme, so each instrument is different. I also differentiate the group track cover from, it's different than the tracks that are unfurled from it. So like, just to like make it easier for my eye to know where the groups are. But how I like to organize is, I used to build it from the bottom up. I would put all my kit together on the left-hand side from left to right, kit and then bass and then guitars and then vocals and keyboards and things. But right now I've really liked having vocals pretty much all the way to the left and then kit, then bass, then keys. If I had guitars in this piece, I'd probably go bass, so all the stringed instruments, and then I would go the keys into keys. But I feel like because I work with vocals, I probably spend, in the mixing process, I don't know, if full out of the full mixing, maybe like 30% of the time is on vocals because they tend to be so important that I like having it on the left-hand side. I also, for writing, always keep a MIDI piano, all the way on the left-hand side. That way, if I'm working on ideas, I just have a piano available that I can pick out a melody or pick out chord progressions and things. But so I have piano. I keep all my vocals. I group all the verse vocals together, and I group the chorus vocals together. Depending on what the piece is, I might group all backup vocals together. It just sort of depends. It didn't make sense for this particular one. But then kit, and then any percussion stuff. I got a bunch of claps in this one. And then, like I said, I'll put the basses, and then this one has a bunch of keyboards in it. And you can nestle groups inside of groups. As you can see, like kit In this case, it doesn't incorporate perk, but how do I do it here? In keys, you can see keys is all of the soft synths that I'm using, but I've also grouped, I have like this bell thing happening. I've just grouped those two together. And the reason why I would do that is, say I want to EQ or put the same effects on all of the keys. Like maybe I want to do like an end sort of very light compression on all the keys just to make sure that they sit in the mix the right way. But I want to then, on these soft bells, I want to EQ or apply a different effects to those only specifically. So it's still going to get all the effects that I've applied on the keys group, but everything else in the keys group won't get what I've put on the soft bells. So anyway, that's how I like to organize my flow. And like I said, you can just, make this smaller and much more manageable to look at if you just hit the groups. And then once you build this, and so going into a project, a recording project, think about the things you're going to need in the project. If it's, if you're just doing an acoustic track with some vocals, maybe some overlaid vocals, you may only need 4 tracks. You may want a left or right, sort of a stereo recording of the acoustic guitar. You may want your main vocal track and a backup vocal track, and then it's just 4 tracks and easy, and you probably don't need to do all this group stuff. But if you're gonna do something bigger with a lot of moving parts, think about how you wanna organize it. Build the tracks, and you can always change them later, but build the tracks how you think they're gonna be set up so that there's a logical flow in your own head. Color code them away so it's easy on the eyes to see. Group them in a way that makes sense to you. And like I said, you can always change it. My things sort of change a little bit as I go, but I do have a template that I work from. And then if you know you're going to do the same thing over and over again, I'm going to do a singer-songwriter album. It's going to be 10 tracks, going to be vocals and acoustic. Maybe I'll put a bass in there sometimes. If you know that you're going to do that, create a template for yourself and save it. And this is how you do that. And the other thing too is like I always have a verb return track and a delay return track just hanging out there. Sometimes I don't always use a lot of return tracks. I'll actually put stuff directly on the tracks, and there's reasons for it that I'll get into at a later date. But I'll have that there just for when I'm demoing. If I structure out my song, and I've created the drums, the bass, the keys, or whatever, and I'm working on my vocal lines, I'll just have that there so that I can put a little bit of reverb on myself. It doesn't sound like complete crap as I'm writing. So I just always have that there. But once you're happy with your setup, what you can do is you can save it as a template, and that's very simple. And File here, you can just go to Save Live Set as a Template. And where it goes, I'm just going to hit it, is in your templates folder, which is part of your user library. And we'll just call this full band 2 or something. And that way, you can always recall it. Everything too. It's the effects that you have on, the grouping that you've done, the color coding, everything is just saved right there. And so it's in your user library underneath templates, but it's also in this templates folder right here. So I could just grab full band or full band 2, and then as soon as I open up when I open up a live instance, hit that, and then all my tracks are organized perfectly for me. And I use this full band template pretty much all the time. The only time I'd really change it is if I wanted to add some guitars to it. I have a one that I would use specifically for voiceover, but this is the one that I traditionally use for full band. Anyway, so that's template. So back here on the arrangement view, the tracks are laid out horizontally, as you can see. And they mimic, right? So all these vocal groups, the kit group, the basses, the keys are all same order, top to bottom: piano, vocals, kit, perk, bass, etc. here. And then by unfurling them, you can see everything that was recorded. Another thing that I like to do is I organize based on what the heck is going on in the track. So as you can see, I've got markers for intro, for verse 1, for verse 2, chorus, etc., etc. And how you do that is just at the top of the screen, you just right click, and then they call it locator. There's markers or locator, same thing. Hit add locator, you can name it. whatever. And if you just right click on it again, you can delete it. Very simple. The other cool thing is at the top of the screen, this is something that Ableton does so well, makes it so easy, is if you want to create time signature changes, that happens just by right-clicking at the top. You want to put in a 3/4 bar in the middle of your 4/4 song. You do that right here at the top. And it's just so simple. I've had other DAWs that I've worked at that make that super hard, super complicated, but not in Ableton. It's very easy. Let's see. And then just working in this view, I'm going to get into more details about using automation, how I mix here. So if you're used to doing live audio, the way that you see live audio being mixed is with a board and faders and things, and it's a very tactile approach. Well, and it was a hard transition for me to make, going from that. So you look on the session view and you see these channels and you see the faders and things. And you're like, oh, that feels familiar. So you're kind of, for me, I was drawn to this view, but I never mix that way anymore. I'm always mixing using automation. So I'm setting my initial idea of how loud or soft something should be, but then later on, I'm using automation channels here. Like I'll just show you the perk one. Go mixer, track volume, and I'm drawing it out like this. I'll get into that in more detail on a different track. But so I'm not mixing on a board. I'm mixing using automation, and that it took a little while to get used to, but it feels a lot more comfortable now than ever before. And you can get just a lot more granular. In other DAWs I've worked on, you sort of hit record. So you record fader moves and then you can draw it in later. Some people like to do it like that. I don't. I feel like it's, if I had a physical MIDI board, which some people do, it might feel better, but I don't have that. So I could use there's knobs and faders on my keyboard. It's just not as comfortable or granular. It feels not specific. So I just prefer to draw it out, and I get really good results that way. But I'll go through that some other time. But that's it. And then it's very easy to use this view. If you have clips or tracks, you can just you can copy with Apple C, paste Apple V or Command V. You can duplicate by Command D. It's very simple to move stuff around. You can select whole things and drag them. Very, very simple. So say I've structured out my song, but I need to put a bridge in here. It's very easy to select things, move them down. You right click to change the grid. So that means I want things to only move in 1 bar increments. That will lock you into 1 bar increments. Or if you hit the command, you can actually, it removes the grid. So you're just, you can just drag it very granularly. And it's very easy to take it off. So usually when I'm editing, I take it off because I'm getting into really specifics of stuff that I want to, I want to grab, which you have a hard time doing when the grid's on. But anyway, super simple to work on and to work in. And so that's pretty much the arrangement view. And then the bottom is the same, right? So you have the clip view down here. So if you select the clip, you can do some things down here. You can loop it, change the time signature. You can actually change the gain of the file, etc., of the clip, etc. And then also, this is where you would find, your entire rack of effects. As you can see on this vocal track here, there's a ton of stuff going on, but I'll talk you through that. It looks more complicated than it is. I'll talk you through that some other time. Anyway, this is the arrangement view. All right, the last thing that I want to talk you through is just the preferences or settings. And if you hit Command and comma, you get the preferences. Now, that it's weird, they call it, if you go up here to live settings, is what they call it here. So it's settings, but it's preferences in the window. So I don't know, that's a little strange. But you can just do a ton of stuff here. So for example, and we'll just go into the tabs that I use. So in the look and feel, so I've this nice purple interface, this darker interface and very subdued tones. You can change the color scheme all here. You can just, by going to the different themes, that hurts everything. Dark. You can even zoom this window. So usually I keep this on 100, but I zoomed it to 125 so that I could see a lot of stuff on the screen, but I zoomed it to 125 to make it a little bit easier for you to see when I'm recording this. You can choose the brightness, the color intensity. So once you choose like a hue, so this is this is a purplish hue, you can choose how intense the color is. Like that's way grayed out, right? But I like the nice grimace purple. Change a bunch of stuff there. Anyway, so that's look and feel. In audio is one of the first things that you would set up. So this is where you would choose your interface. So like you'd see the driver type in a Mac, you're going to choose core audio. And then this will have a list of any interface that you'd had connected in the past. And so the one that I'm using is this UA audio, and that's my input and output device that's already been configured. You can choose your sample rate here. The higher the sample rate, the more fidelity you have. Latency is a big thing. And in case you don't know what latency is the time that it takes for you to strike your MIDI keyboard and the sound to play in your headphones. And believe it or not, that has a huge effect on how much CPU Ableton is using. The higher the sample rate, the buffer size for latency, the higher the buffer size, the longer it's going to take for that loop to occur, and the less processing power your computer is going to go through. So normally, if I'm recording MIDI, I have my input latency down really, really low. So 64 samples, that's I think it's milliseconds. Really low. So I don't feel that there's any distance between me striking the key and me hearing it. It doesn't, it's imperceptible to me. But at 500, it's super off. And if you've ever tried to play some MIDI synths and record when the buffer size is really high, you can't, you'll know you're off. It just does not feel right. So, but if I'm not recording MIDI, I usually keep the buffer size kind of higher because see what happened to the CPU usage up here. See how it's like 29%? I think if we go to 64, it's going to have a pretty big jump. 64. Yeah, see, it's 41 now up here. Bloop, bloop. 41. So it makes a pretty big difference. And if you got a lot of stuff going on and your buffer size is really low, your system could choke. You'll start hearing artifacts in your recording, and it'll just choke. The playhead won't play fluidly. A lot of problems happen. Anyway, so pay attention to that. When recording, low buffer size. When not recording, and I'm not talking about audio tracks, just MIDI tracks. When you're not recording MIDI tracks, then keep your sample rate high. Then let's see. This is where all your MIDI devices are. So Keylab is what I'm using right now. File folders, I don't really worry about. Plugins though. So plugins are, your computer is going to, when you download Ableton, you're going to put all the sounds and instruments into a folder. It's going to do that for you automatically. And Ableton, the DAW, knows where that exists. But if ever you can't find it, you would go into plugins and you would direct Ableton to look in a particular folder. If you hit rescan, a lot of times it'll find it for you. Say things get moved to an adjacent folder or like a subfolder or something. You hit rescan. A lot of times Ableton will see it. But if it doesn't, you can also browse to it. So VSTs are a certain type of plugins. On a Mac, it can read VST plugins, and it can read AU or audio unit plugins. And so I can designate what folder these exist in. And sometimes, like say you're downloading a third-party plugin, maybe it puts it in. Usually they put it in the same folder that all of your plugins are in. But just in case it doesn't, you can find it and point Ableton to it. So that's preferences, and so that's pretty much it. That's that's how you get around Ableton. In subsequent videos, I'm going to break some of these concepts down into more minute detail. Specifically when it comes to editing, mixing, mastering, etc. But for now, I think this gets you a nice little intro into the interface and the DAW that is Ableton. Like I said, highly recommend it. I think Ableton is super powerful and super flexible. That's it. See you next time.